now humbly ask the President, the Honorable President of the Indian Economic Association, Professor S. Mahendradev, to kindly give his permission to start the webinar. Sir.
Yeah. Please start. Good evening.
Thank you very much, sir. On behalf of my college family and my organizing team, it gives me great pleasure to welcome everyone to the national webinar being organized this evening. At the outset, we would like to wish everyone a very happy Krishna Janmashtami. We would like to extend our gratitude and warm welcome to our honored guests and featured speakers. Today, we have among us the following dignitaries: Professor S. Mahendradev, Honorable President of the Indian Economic Association and Director and Vice Chancellor of the Indira Gandhi Institute of Development Research in Mumbai. Our chief guest, Professor Sukhdev Thorat, Professor Emeritus, Jawaharlal University, Delhi, former chairman of the Indian Economic Association, University Grants Commission, and the Indian Council of Social Science Research. We also have among us the Honorable Secretary of the Indian Economic Association, Professor B.P. Chandra Mohan, Honorable Chief Convener of the Indian Economic Association, Dr. Anil Kumar Thakur, Dr. S. Narayanan, Chief Coordinator of the Indian Economic Association. We take this opportunity to accord a cordial and warm welcome to all the executive members and the office bearers of the Indian Economic Association. And of course, we have among us our esteemed key speakers for the event, Professor Vijay Veer Singh and Professor Ravi Kiran. Professor Vijay Veer Singh is Professor of Economics, Director, Niti Ayog Chair in the University of Rajasthan, Jaipur. Professor Ravi Kiran is Professor in the School of Humanities and Social Sciences at Thapar Institute of Engineering and Technology, Patiala, Punjab. The Honorable Secretary of the Management Committee of our college, Shri Mahesh Chand Kansal, was very keen to be part of this event, but he could not attend due to ill health. He has asked me to convey his greetings to everyone and good wishes for the success of the event. We are extremely glad to have among us the Honorable Principal of the College, Dr. Mamta Sharma. We would also like to acknowledge the gracious presence of the members of our college. And finally, my mentor and my guide, the person without whom all this would not have been possible, the Honorable Convener of this webinar, Professor Atveer Singh, Department of Economics, Chaudhry Charan Singh University, Meerut. And last but not the least, we feel great joy in welcoming all the participants who are attending this webinar from different parts of the country. We are excited to have you all here this evening. Now, please allow me to say a few words about the theme of the event, which is Indian Economy After COVID-19, Challenges and the Way Forward. With India gradually unlocking in phases, can we say that the worst is over for the economy? It may be too early to answer in the affirmative due to the risks on account of rising COVID-19 cases and intermittent state lockdowns. Since they make the recovery prospects fragile, it calls for constant and dynamic monitoring of the various sectors of the Indian economy. In this regard, our first speaker for today, Dr. Vijay Veer Singh, will speak about poverty and unemployment. Our second speaker, Professor Ravi Kiran, will talk about the resurgence of Indian manufacturing and education sector in post-COVID period. We would like to express a heartfelt thank you to the Indian Economic Association for giving us the opportunity to organize this event. It is more than a century-old prestigious national body, which was born in 1917 with the notable objective to stimulate interest and to promote the advancement of economic science in India. Among its former presidents were renowned scholars like Professor V.K.R.V. Rao, Nobel laureate Professor Amartya Sen, former Prime Minister of India Professor Manmohan Singh, Professor C. Rangarajan, Professor T.S. Papola, and many others. Throughout the years, seminars and conferences on select themes are being organized by the Indian Economic Association in collaboration with the local associations, universities, and colleges. Which brings me to say a few words about my college. Since its inception in 1966, the college is the oldest institute catering to the higher educational needs of the socially and educationally backward area of Gulauthi in Bulandshahr district of Uttar Pradesh and its surrounding area. The college has been playing an instrumental role in bringing about major positive changes in the life of college students, residents in the rural catchment area, and the society at large in the hinterlands of Western Uttar Pradesh. We hope that today's event inspires ideas and discussions around the ways that we can make our world a better place. A true welcome is never complete without warm words and warmer gestures. I would now like to invite the Honorable Principal of our college, Dr. Mamta Sharma, to say a few words. Over to you, ma'am.
Good evening, all of you. First of all, I welcome all the delegates, all the people, all the teachers, principals, and all presented here. The topic of this webinar is really very, very interesting and very, very, I should say, conspicuous, eye-catching in the present scenario. Before starting this webinar, first of all, I offer my heartfelt gratitude to Ma Saraswati. I naman her because without her worship, no task related with education or educational field cannot be performed. So I owe my gratitude to Ma Saraswati. I naman her, and then I offer my heartfelt thanks to this organization, Indian Economic Association, who gave us an opportunity to organize this webinar through DNPG College, Gulauthi. So I, the principal of the college, Dr. Mamta Sharma, first of all, welcome all the keynote speakers, all the guests, chief guest, organizer, chief convener, Dr. Atvir Singh, and the organizing secretary, Mr. Bhavni Singh Batraji, and my all colleagues who were taking part very vigorously, very jealously to make this webinar a success worth remembering. The topic is very, very challenging. It is very burning. No topic can be as burning as this topic. COVID-19 challenges the way ahead. Yeah, the way forward. Challenge. This word is really appeal to me. It appealed to me in many senses. Why? Challenge. It has a strong power. Some take this word very lightly, but others, they take it very strongly. Lightly in the sense, they think whatever is going on, it will pass over. It will pass away one day. And then we will lead a very smooth life. We will lead a very happy life. So they leave everything in the hands of God or in the hands of destiny. उनका बिलीव होता है कोई है वही जो राम रची राखा. So they do not work hard. They do not use their capabilities. They do not use their jealous attitude, zeal, enthusiastic attitude. But on the other side, there are such persons who take this challenge very strongly. And whatever they can do, they do it for the sake of future, for the sake of well-being of the world, for the sake of the well-being of our country, for the sake of their institution. And they do work hard, strive, struggle, and pave the way for others also. And they are determined until the day is achieved or their destination is achieved, they never stop. So this challenge, this word is very valuable, it is very precious. And challenge. And now worthy speakers are here, eminent speakers are here. They will also express their views. But I am very happy to welcome they all because they are giving, they are presenting, they are spending their precious time to make this webinar a grand success as well as worth remembering. And I feel definitely when the webinar is over, they will murmur in their hearts. Definitely this line I have thought, anything can be bought by money, but updated knowledge cannot be bought by money. It is achieved by discussion. It is achieved through webinars. It is achieved through seminars, through workshops, through conferences. So I once again welcome all the people, audience, my managing committee, my fellow beings, all principals of the college, faculty, organizer, from the innermost recesses of my heart, and feel that really this webinar will make an achievement and it will pave the way for the others also. My gratitude, my thanks and blessings. Naman, thank you, thanks a lot. Now I hand over. Savneet ji.
Yes, ma'am.
Now
Thank
take
you
the
very much,
charge.
ma'am. Thank you very much, ma'am, for your kind words of blessings. I now call upon the honorable convener of the event, Professor Atveer Singh, to enlighten us more about the theme of the event. Over to you, sir.
Thank you, Bhavni. President, Indian Economic Association, Professor S. Mahendradev, our guest of honor, Professor Subdev Thoratji, key speakers of the day, Professor Vijayveer Singh ji from University of Rajasthan, Jaipur, and Professor Ravi Kiran from Thapar Institute of Engineering and Technology, Patiala, Punjab. Chief Convener of Indian Economic Association, Dr. Anil Kumar Thakur, General Secretary, Indian Economic Association, Dr. B.P. Chandramohanji, Secretary Management Committee, DN College, Gulavati, Sri Maheshant Kansalji, Principal, DN College, Gulavati, Dr. Mamta Sharmaji, Dr. Devendra Awasthi, the Vice President, Indian Economic Association, Dr. B.S. Yadav, former faculty of DN College, Gulavati, and currently an independent director at the Mangalore Refinery and Petrochemicals Limited, Dr. Narayanan, Chief Coordinator of Indian Economic Association, executive members of Indian Economic Association and other office bearers of Indian Economic Association, fellow delegates, ladies and gentlemen, a very good evening and happy Krishna Janmashtami to all. It's really a matter of great pleasure that Indian Economic Association has been organizing the national webinar lecture series and panel discussions on contemporary economic and social issues in collaboration with the different universities and prestigious colleges of the country. In this context, Secretary Indian Economic Association Dr. Chandra Mohan asked me to organize a national webinar in our university as well. I thought that in university departments nowadays, there is a flood of webinars. So why can't we use this opportunity to organize the webinar in a college which caters the higher educational needs of students of the rural catchment area of Western Uttar Pradesh. So for this, I asked two of my students, Dr. Lokesh Kumar of JS College Secunderabad in district Bulandshahr and Mr. Bhavani Singh Batra of DN College Gulabchi, that is also in Bulandshahr. Both of them gladly prepared to organize this event in their college. Finally, DM College got this opportunity. It may be a favor from my side for the DM College Gulabchi, as it is my alma mater. So far as the theme of the webinar is concerned, you all are well aware that the unprecedented crisis of COVID-19 and the lockdown have shattered the economy of India in a very vindicative way. Country is facing two simultaneous crises: an economic crisis destroying our livelihoods and a health crisis that threatens our lives. The two crises are deeply intertwined. Our economy cannot be reopened without credibly addressing fears of infection and resurgence. Fear is driving a significant part of the current economic slowdown. This includes fear of our own health as well as the uncertainty of future lockdowns. It has affected both the life and the livelihood of the people at large. Even before the COVID-19 pandemic, the basic fundamentals of the Indian economy were showing declining trends. GDP growth was falling, investment, consumption, and exports all were declining, and unemployment rate was increasing. Till 2017, the GDP growth was quite good. But after 2017, due to some inexplicable reasons like demonetization, etc., GDP starting to go down. When COVID-19 came to India, it resulted in a further increase in the unemployment rate and a fall in the GDP growth rate. It affected both the formal as well as the informal sector. The Prime Minister of India has recognized the severity of the pandemic, announced the relief from stimulus package of more than 20 lakh crore, almost 10% of India's GDP. But when the finance minister unveiled the package sector by sector, it did not take much time to figure out that the additional relief and stimulus in the system is just about 1 to 2% of GDP, not 10%. Much of the rest is directed towards increasing liquidity and deferring some loan payments, but not much additional cash. The government has been tight-fisted on cash payments, most likely because its tax revenues are declining. And it is hesitant to print more cash out of the fear of being downgraded by the rating agencies. The state government also take several steps to face the unprecedented challenge. Some state governments launched direct income transfer schemes to the farmers. But the basic question that arises here is, who is the actual beneficiary of this income support scheme? the owner farmer or the tenant farmer who actually tills the land. Ideally, the money should go to the real tiller. But in large parts of the country, there is no record of tenancy. So it is very difficult to send directly the income support to the real tiller. Rural sector needs to be looked at very carefully because approximately 50% of the population is dependent on rural sector and its contribution in GDP is less than 15%. There are several queries in mind of common men regarding this pandemic and its impact on their livelihood. A few of them are listed here, like what proactive steps should we adopt to overcome this pandemic and minimize its spread? What policies do we need for the migrant workers? How do you give the rights of workers? How do we make labor policy more inclusive? Is there any fiscal space with the government for another fiscal stimulus? What mode should we prefer to finance the increasing fiscal deficit? Because increasing fiscal deficit is also a concern for the government. How do we increase the investment in infrastructure projects? How do we increase the levels of consumption, investment, exports, electricity consumption, etc.? Another query may be, how do we help the rural poor as well as the urban poor? What are the medium-term prospects for the Indian economy? That is again a very important concern for the policymakers, and how to face the global challenge like the China-US trade war. And besides, there are so many issues regarding the macroeconomic framework and finance. The issue of corporate debts and banking sector's NPAs is also important. So keeping in view the ongoing debate and opportune time, we have planned to organize a national webinar on the theme Indian economy after COVID-19, challenges and the way forward. The experts, policy intellectuals, and social activists have been pondering over how to address these issues to overcome the prevailing pandemic. We are fortunate enough to have intellectually a very rich panel of experts to deliberate on the subject of this webinar. I hope that all the participants will be benefited by the deliberations that will be going on. I thank you all for accepting our invitation and sparing their valuable time out of their very busy schedule. We shall feel to hear you today. Thank you for being with us. I personally thank the Indian Economic Association for giving this opportunity to organize a national webinar on such a relevant issue and for extending the technical support. Thank you very much. Over to you, Bhavneet.
Thank you, sir, for the enlightening words. Now, I consider it a great honor to welcome Professor B.P. Chandramohan, Honorable Secretary of the Indian Economic Association, for words from the IEA. Over to you, sir. Professor Chandramohan.
Is available?
Yeah, he's there.
Yeah. I think Professor Mahendra Dev has to inaugurate it, and I will speak at the end. Professor Mahendra Dev is there. He is here to inaugurate the. So I think after inauguration.
Okay,
Okay,
Bhavnik,
sir.
you request Professor Dev.
Okay, sir. Okay, sir. Okay, sir. Uh, Ladies and gentlemen, we now have the opportunity to listen to our Honorable President of the Indian
Professor
Economic
Bhavnik,
Association.
your voice is not audible, sir.
Hello, am I audible now?
Yeah, you are audible.
Yes.
Audible.
So, ladies and
Now it is
gentlemen,
better, sir. Please go ahead. Yeah.
we now have the opportunity to listen to our Honorable President of the Indian Economic Association, Professor S. Mahendra Dev. As a renowned economist, he stands tall among the galore of academicians. Any introduction of Professor Dev is redundant, but still, before inviting him to address the audience, I would like to take this privilege to introduce him, especially to the young audience. Professor Mahendra Dev has been the director and vice chancellor of the Indira Gandhi Institute of Development Research in Mumbai since 2010. Prior to this position, he was the chairman of the Commission for Agricultural Cost and Prices in the Ministry of Agriculture from 2008 to 2010. He was director of the Center for Economic and Social Studies, Hyderabad, for 9 years from 1999 to 2008. He is the vice chairman of the Board of Trustees of International Food Policy Research Institute in Washington, D.C. He was member and acting chairman of the National Statistical Commission, Government of India. He got the prestigious Malcolm Adicea Award in 2016. He received his PhD from the Delhi School of Economics and did his postdoctoral research at the Yale University. His main areas of interest are development economics, agricultural policies, rural development, and social sector. He has around 200 research publications in national and international journals in the areas of agricultural development, poverty and public policy, inequality, food security, nutrition, employment guarantee schemes, social security, farm and non-farm employment. He has written or edited more than 20 books. His well-cited publication is Inclusive Growth in India, Agriculture, Poverty and Human Development, published by the Oxford University Press. His book, Perspectives on Equitable Development, was released by the former Prime Minister of India. He has been a consultant and advisor to many international organizations such as the UNDP, World Bank, International Food Policy Research Institute, UNESCO, ILO, FAO, UNICEF, and OECD. He has been a member of several government committees in India, including the Prime Minister's Task Force on Employment, chaired by Dr. Montek Aluwalia, member of the Committee on Financial Inclusion, chaired by Dr. C. Rangarajan, member of the Expert Group on Poverty, chaired by Dr. C. Rangarajan. He was member of several working groups for 9th, 10th, 11th, and 12th five-year plans in India. He is also a member of several committees of Niti Aayog. He has received honors for eminence in public service. He got awards for the best teacher in economics and outstanding contribution to education. He received his honorary doctorate from the Acharya Nagarjuna University, Andhra Pradesh. I now take the privilege to request our Honorable President, Professor Mahendra Dev, to address the audience and motivate them with his words of wisdom.
Thank you, Professor Thorat, the distinguished keynote speakers, and the organizers of the college and the Indian Economic Association, and all the participants. Good evening and happy Janmashtami to all of you. And I'm happy that the Department of Economics, Devanagari, the Gulavati College, and Indian Economic Association are organizing this important webinar on Indian economy after COVID-19, challenges and the way forward. As you know, the Indian Economic Association, as mentioned earlier, has more than 100 years history. And then we have more than 7,000 members here. And in the last 3 months, we have been organizing the webinars relating to the several distinguished speakers gave lectures and panel discussions. And now in the last 1 month, we have been having webinars associating with colleges and universities all over India. So I'm happy that your college is organizing this. And as mentioned earlier, it's an important topic. So I will be brief. I'll speak a few words on the impact of COVID on an economy and the way forward. As you know, as mentioned by Dr. Atvir Singh, it has created both health and economic crisis. But now, earlier I used to say our health crisis, we have done well. Death rate is relatively low compared to Europe and USA. But now I'm getting worried because the COVID is spreading to rural areas, small towns. So we don't know, a lot of uncertainty regarding this COVID now, and it has implications for the economy. So let's see what will happen in the next few months. But as mentioned earlier, also we have to see the pre-COVID situation when you analyze the present COVID impact on the economy. Economy was slowing down from 8% in 2017 last quarter to 3%, 3.1% in the last quarter of 2019-20. So drastic reduction in economic growth. And employment also, the participation rates declined significantly for men as well as women, and then unemployment increased. The participation rates, for example, women, which was 45% in 2004-5, it is declined to 23% in 2017-18. So the employment situation was also not good. So on top of that, because investment declined, consumption declined, on top of that, we had this COVID, which has created more problems for the economy and employment. The economy, we all know that global economy also is in bad shape, because that has implications for India, because India is an open economy. We are not closed. So that whatever happens at global level has impact on Indian economy. So global level estimates show that the Europe will have minus 10% GDP growth, and US also have minus 8%, and the world economy will have about minus 4 to 5% in 2021. And India, I'll come to India's growth. India's growth, several estimates are there. In fact, they say that minus 5 to minus 10 also, some people say the real growth. So it has a lot of impact on the economy, both investment, consumption, although more urban areas, and now it is spreading to rural areas. And then coming to the inclusive growth, the agriculture, livelihoods. The agriculture is less affected compared to urban areas, because still agriculture growth, they're estimating 2.3 to 3% this year because of good monsoons, good kharif and rabi crop. But what happens is sometimes when you have bumper crops, the prices fall, agriculture prices. So, and also supply chain problems are still there. So what happens, farmers will get less prices, consumers have to pay more prices in small towns and urban areas. So then supply chains have to be improved. Otherwise, farmers will also get affected. But also rural areas doesn't mean only agriculture, because if you see data, agriculture share in income in rural areas is now 30 to 40%. The rest is non-agriculture, like manufacturing and services in rural areas. So one has to see the impact on them also, because when the urban linkages are there, then they also got affected. So that's why you can see unemployment rate increased from 8% to 27% in urban areas, even in rural areas, about 23% or so in April, May. Although now it has declined after the unlock. It has impacted much more the bottom of the pyramid. The informal sector workers are much more affected, particularly the migrant workers. They are more affected, and In fact, migrants, the way we treated more inhuman kind of thing, it's a blot on India's history. I mean, how the migrants have been treated after during the COVID period. So I hope now we'll take more measures to help them. It's a kind of reverse migration from urban to rural areas. Almost 40 to 50 million have migrated. The government, RBI, and state governments have responded. As mentioned earlier, the 10% of GDP is given Atmanirbhar. Then RBI has given a lot of liquidity support and reduction in interest rates. And state governments also have the Kerala, Chhattisgarh, several other UP, several other state governments have also done some stimulation. Now, what is going to be? It is unlocking now, done. And some people are saying that there is a rural revival. You can see in the newspapers that they're saying that there is a rural revival because tractor sales are increasing and FMCG sector is, some sales are increasing. But I find, even pre-COVID time, rural wages have been stagnant. The growth rate has been stagnant. And the terms of trade were moving against agriculture. So, and the remittances have declined to rural areas. So in this context, whether the demand is, it's a pent-up demand for some time because of unlockdown, but whether it's sustainable, one has to see. And also, as I mentioned, that agriculture may be doing well, but agriculture also regional disparities are there. For example, Rabi procurement, wheat and other things, the Punjab, Haryana, and some of the states have benefited, but some other states have not benefited. Fruits and vegetables, they didn't get higher prices. So there is a regional inequalities in agriculture also, and rural revival. So one has to see how the rural revival happens, because urban linkage is also important for small towns and all. When urban manufacturing and services are not there, even rural areas get affected. And then there will be new normal now. On health side, we all know that next 1 year we have to follow till the vaccine comes, the social or physical distance, the masks, the sanitizers will be normal in the next near future. At the global level also, the geopolitical challenges are there. US-China trade war is going on still. And China will try to be aggressive. And so one has to see what is the impact on India. Whether India will get opportunity to expand, that we have to see. And the world of work culture will also change. More work from home. Already IT companies have said 1 year you can work from home. So there will be virtual meetings like this. And digitization will be the new growth. I mean, in the sense that more technology and others will increase. But on the other hand, poverty and inequality also will increase because of the impact on livelihoods. And also digital thing, you can see that, for example, it is having a digital divide. For example, we have online classes. Some people don't have even internet facilities and other facilities in rural areas and all. So they're not able to benefit from these online classes. So the digital divide, one has to think about that. And also there is a gig economy. Gig economy is basically, we have Swiggy's and Amazon, those who delivery boys and the drivers of the Uber, Ola, all this gig economy also are suffering because of the COVID. And also financial sector, even before COVID, we had twin balance sheet problem. Corporate sector was in the debts, and then NPA problems. Public sector is having 10 to 15% NPAs. So that may increase further now in the after post-COVID. So new normal for Indian economy is that we used to have 7% to 8% growth earlier. New normal could be 4 to 5% even after 1 year, after 1 or 2 years. So this 5 trillion economy getting to that, it may get much delayed now, because earlier we were thinking of by 2024 we will get the $5 trillion dollar economy. So what should be done? First thing, of course, the investment has to be increased in rural and urban areas. Because without that, for example, rural areas, agriculture, you need to have more the agro processing, value chains, and those kind of storage and those kind of things will trigger more money to the farmers, because agriculture alone cannot give farmers income. So there are also supplement with the value chains, processing, post harvest, those kind of things are important. So and also the construction is very important. The in rural areas, for example, even before COVID, up to 2011-12, I mean, the construction sector played an important role. In fact, the share of employment in rural areas increased from 2% to almost 12% during that time. So that time, agriculture, I mean, the rural wages were very high when the construction sector was there. So NREGA will help, but that won't increase rural wages that much, because 200 rupees are there. But we need to have also the apart from investment, social protection. I mean, the food transfers already Prime Minister announced, but people are talking about cash transfers. I mean, they are given only 500 rupees. Whether we need more for migrant workers, and also MG NREGA much more increase. For example, Dr. Rangarajan and myself, we have written recently, it should be 150 days in some of the areas, because already many people have exhausted 100 days. So that kind of issues are important. And also social security for some of these people. For example, migrant workers, what are their rights? One nation, one ration card may help, but when they go back to urban areas, what about the housing, and then health and education facilities for their children? So those kind of issues, I think one has to talk about in the medium term. And also social sector, health sector now is becoming an important one after COVID. Now we have to increase the expenditure. People have been talking about 2% or more should be given to health sector. Now we are spending only 1.2%. So that will be much more. And lastly, on education, the new education policy now has come. A lot of discussion. Yesterday also we had webinar on that. So that is going to also decide about the education sector, both school education and higher education, because there are two problems with the education. One is, of course, the quality of education, and the second is the divide. We have, very good high quality education institutions like IITs, IIMs, and many other IISc, Indian Institute of Science, and those kind of institutes. But on the other hand, very low quality education institutions, without, churning the undergraduates with, they cannot get employment and those things. So that, I think, new education policy has to correct the divides within the education sector. We can have high class, but also the bottom of the pyramid, public schools and other, how do you improve the quality is important. On the higher education, we all know the changes they are making. The four-year undergraduate and other things they are mentioning, and also National Research Foundation, the National Institute of UGC, some other organization, these kind of things. But lastly, what the implementation is important, because we've been talking about 6% of expenditure of GDP on education since the Kothari Commission. But now one has to see how 6% will be achieved. And also, the education policy should not be centralized. there should be a decentralization because it's a state subject. And then what is good in Kerala may not be good in Gujarat or Bihar or UP. So you need to have decentralized approach for the education sector. So the coming back to economy finally, I think the Indian economy has bright future in the medium term, but the five trillion dollar economy will take some time because even by end of 2022, the financial year 21-22, the levels of GDP will be the same because compared to 2019-20, we are having 200 trillion rupees of GDP by the end of 2019-20. But even by the end of 21-22, we'll have the same one. Because this year, it will decline by 5% or 6%. And then next year, it will grow by 5 to 6%. So levels will be same, even after 2 years. So then the 5 trillion economy, it will take some time. But the medium-term prospects are good because our fundamentals of the economy is still good. I mean, we don't have that much debt in the economy, and our hopefully demographic dividend will have some more workforce, and then savings will increase. So I'm confident optimistic about the Indian economy. But now we are facing lots of problems on the health crisis and economic crisis that has to be solved immediately. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir, for your words of wisdom. Your aura has lent a unique charm to this event. We now move on to the lectures or speeches by our key speakers. But before we do that, I would like to share with you the details of the questions and answers session that will follow the talks. I would like to inform you that we will take up the questions after the lectures are given by both the speakers. Therefore, I request you to please formulate your questions and type them in the chat box. We shall take up your questions from the chat box itself. Also, please remember to write the name of the speaker to which your question is addressed, so that it makes our work easier when the questions are taken up after both the lectures are over. So don't forget this. I repeat again, kindly type your questions in the chat box. Okay, so now we move on to the first speech of this session by Professor Vijay Veer Singh. I first call upon Mr. Avdesh Kumar Singh, Assistant Professor, Department of Physical Education, to provide an introduction to our first speaker. Over to you, Avdesh sir.
Good evening to all present here. Thank you, Bhavneet sir, for providing me an opportunity to introduce such an illustrious and eminent mentor among us. Dr. Vijay Veer Singh sir has a teaching and research experience of more than 36 years. Presently, he is serving University of Rajasthan, Jaipur in various capacities such as Professor of Economics, Director Niti Aayog, Chair and Director UGC Human Resource Development Center. He also served University of Rajasthan, Jaipur as Dean, Faculty of Social Science. Further, his research experience is very extensive. He has worked on more than 14 research projects which are funded by different agencies like OECD Paris, World Bank, UFID UK, British High Commissions in India, Ministry of HRD, Government of India and Planning Commission, Niti Aayog, IFCI, UGC, ICSSR, etc. He also served University of Rajasthan. He has also worked as Sciences PO Paris, which is an University of Social Science in Paris, and International Institute of Population Sciences, that is IIPS, Mumbai, on research assignments. Professor Singh has worked in various committees like the regional level consultation group on approach paper to the 12th 5-year plan of India, working group of Rajasthan State Commission for Urbanization, research jury at Sciences, PO University Paris, and various committees of UGC, NAC, and ICSSR, etc. He has authored more than 60 papers, articles, briefing papers, monographs for national and international journals, and has wrote 2 books. Thank you very much, sir, to grace this event with your presence and provide us the opportunity to hear you. Thank you very much. I welcome one and all again. Over to you, Bhavneet sir.
Thank you, Avdesh sir. Ladies and gentlemen, now comes the opportunity to listen to the words by Professor Vijay Veer Singh. He is going to cover poverty and unemployment. Over to you, Professor.
Thank you, Avneet. Professor Mahendra Dev, President of IEA. I got opportunity to hear him a few months back. I invited him for the webinar in Niti Aayog chair, and he was gracious to accept our offer. Professor Thorat, General Secretary of IEA, Professor Chandra Mohan, my friend and colleagues from various universities and colleges. First of all, I am thankful to Indian Economic Association and Devanagari PG College for giving me this opportunity to share my views on this issue. When I am going to discuss, this is my nature actually, that my target is always students, because they are the future of the country. And when I'm interacting with the students, certainly we should be going in the background which is not mentioned in particularly their textbooks. So if you look at the background, so I start with the Nehruji's book, Discovery of India, 1946. When he writes that if we want to maintain a basic standard of living of people in India, we need 500 to 600% increment in per capita income. But then he mentions the constraints also. When he mentions the constraint, this is not possible, let's say it's a huge target. So certainly he says we should be focusing on at least 200 to 300% of increment in national wealth in next 10 years, that is by 1956. And then he mentions, and again, he look at the speech he delivers on 15th of August, 1947, when we got independence. He clearly identifies 2 pillars on which India's destiny is going to rest. The first pillar is, that is the politics of democracy. And second pillar he mentions, that is the economics of poverty removal. Or when he talks of poverty removal, he specifies clearly ending poverty, ignorance, disease, and inequality in opportunity. Again, he mentions there is the Gandhiji's vision to wipe out every tear from every eye. So long as there are tears and suffering, our work is not done. So that is the indication that we are recognizing poverty, first case, before the beginning or before India getting independence. One thing is very clear as far as the politics of democracy is concerned. India is one of the very few countries, few developing countries, who continues democracy for more than 7 decades. But if we look at the second pillar, that is the eradication of poverty, if you see last century, I will say, that is 47 to 2000, the growth has not been sufficient enough to support the poverty eradication. And Indian story is very clear that growth with higher growth poverty eradication takes place. If you look at the unemployment or the unemployment concern, unemployment was not the concern till the second of plan. Because till second plan, we would never bother that India is going to have high level of unemployment. After that, we started focusing on unemployment. In 70s or late 70s, it became a bigger concern that unemployment is to be dealt properly, but without much success. Then we visualize that after reforms with higher economic growth, certainly we are going to have higher employment. But first decade, that is 91 to 2000, we saw a difference that higher growth, but declining unemployment rate, declining growth in employment. So that was the contrast we visualized. That is only the beginning of this century when we saw some dividend of higher economic growth and the growth of employment started rising. So employment, what I meant to mention is that employment and poverty eradication, poverty has not been the concern of the present, or it's not that they are affecting only the corona period. So this has been the past of India. Now, once you go from this, if you look at the development economics, what is the criteria or what we should be focusing on that how to achieve or improve the quality of life? One thing is very clear, the pattern of growth that ensures the most productive use of the asset, and the most productive asset in developing world or in countries like India, that is labor. When again the thing comes to the same point, if you want to have the growth which Professor Mahendra mentioned, whether this growth is inclusive or not, whether this growth is using the manpower or not, or giving employment opportunity or not. And second aspect is that widespread provision of basic social services. When we say basic services, social services, it is all basic requirement or basic needs of people required, particularly by the disadvantaged people. So first, that is the inclusive growth, that is giving the opportunity to the people. And second, that is the social services, they are increasing the capacity of the workers. And when we go for the development theory says very clearly, or the world experience says very clearly, that these two elements, that is inclusive growth and the social services, they are mutually reinforcing. We cannot continue the let's focus on one and we can forget the other one. So that has been the experience theoretically. But one thing is very clear, that is, if you look, the poverty eradication achievement of India, they have been tremendous. We have eradicated poverty very in the number, particularly in the 21st century. But still, when we talk of the people living in a country, then certainly we are on the top. That is, the poverty is still very high in India. And sometimes we think, और कभी-कभी बच्चे सोचने को मजबूर होते हैं कि that you are implementing a slew of anti-poverty programs. मतलब हमने क्या नहीं दिया? Food, paid employment, free power, free house, free gas, fertilizer subsidized, everything is subsidized. So we are giving everything to these people, but certainly still poverty continues, or sometimes I say in a layman language, it is beyond imagination that my great-grandfather was poor, my grandfather was poor, my father was poor, and I am still poor. That is very difficult to understand from the student point of view. If you do not go into the economics, then certainly it indicates it is not only the implementation of multiplication of multiple programs. कि आपने ऐसा नहीं कि poverty हटाने के लिए आपने multiple programs लगा दिए, and हमने कहा कि data says कि this assistance has been given to poor, so poverty eradicated. Then certainly we need to understand what are the basic causes of persistent poverty. So this, why I'm explaining this, that COVID has not suddenly increased the poverty. There have been the factors in the past. And now we are coming to the same growth story. If you visualize what Professor Mahendra mentioned, if you visualize the economic growth story of India, then clear thing is that it has not reduced poverty till last decade because growth was low. So one indication is very clear that higher economic growth is leading to poverty reduction. But if you look at the employment side, then always we say it has been capital. I don't say skilled, I say highly skilled. It is not employment for only skilled people. We need people who are highly skilled. Elections are, people are getting employment who are working in IITs, IIMs, not in basic universities. So you require a high skill people to get a job or get income generation. That is, I'm in a nutshell, I'm going to say that regarding that growth certainly reduce poverty, but it has not created employment growth as expected. When I say that poverty reduced, so this is, you see, is the, if you look at the index of per capita GDP or how per capita income changed during certain periods. In first 30 years, 1950 to 1980, the per capita income, if you say it was 100 rupees in 1950, we could get only 150. It is not the indication, it is just a jump. From, if suppose it was 100 in 1950, so in 30 years, we could reach to 151. In next 10 years, that is 80 to 90, we again could add around 50, 55, 151 to 206, 90 to 2000, it is 206 to 295, little bit higher than 50, you can say. So if you see the history of 1950 to 2000 or the last century, so that issue is that per capita income not risen is very fast rate in this case, but if you look at the 2000 onwards, it is rising at a fast pace. In last 13 years, from 295 to 598, there's almost double. So that is, the poverty has reduced, the per capita income has risen at a faster rate. One model we visualized, and that model we are questioning now. We visualize that if we are helping or supporting the top strata, corporate, big business people, then certainly if they are performing better, then this benefit will trickle down and poverty will reduce, or under the lower strata will also get benefited. But if you look at the trickle down model, this did not work much. If you look at the history of Harish Chavla and Rathin Roy, it mentions that top 5 to 10% people, they are the people who are driving high level consumption. And this high level consumption is creating demand or generating income for next 30 to 40% people. So 50% strata is gone. So first 5 to 10%, they are the high level people who are driving consumption in India. And then next 30 to 40% who are the mostly informal sector entrepreneurs, they are creating, they are trickle down to this. But if you look at the bottom 50%, they are hand to mouth existence. Or sometimes in a nutshell, we can say with economic reforms or with the trickle down model, if you visualize, that is not with high powered with economic growth, it's not, the life has not changed. Life of all people have changed. But life of the rickshaw puller is not changed as the life of ours. So that is the disparity remains. And then I can suggest that one cause of poverty is inadequate income from jobs. We should not be looking at handouts. One basic criteria can be that poor person should be generating income by getting employment. Whatever type of employment he gets, but should be generating his own income. When he is generating income, he is creating demand. When he is creating demand, certainly this 30-40% state is also benefiting, and the corporates are also benefiting because they are also basically dependent on demand. Now, when we look at the employment analysis cannot be done until unless we go for its structural dimension. What is the structure of employment? What is the sectoral share? कि किस सेक्टर में कितने काम करते हैं, मेरा स्ट्रक्चर एम्प्लॉयमेंट का क्या है, whether I am working in an organized sector or unorganized sector. Somewhere we were discussing that there is difference why we focus that much employment in organized sector, not in an unorganized sector, because there are huge disparities in terms of income, in terms of security, in terms of other factors. Then next important aspect is not only employment, the quality of employment, whether the movement of workers taking place or not, whether workers are moving from agriculture to non-agriculture or not. You can say that people are getting employment in agriculture, but the movement is very important, whether they move from agriculture to non-agriculture. When I say non-agriculture, it is not necessary they are moving to urban areas. Non-agriculture activities can take place in rural areas also. Are they moving from casual labor to regular wage employee? Again, there is a disparity, casual labor and regular wage. Are they moving from unorganized sector to organized sector? And then in unorganized sector also, are they moving from regular informal sector to regular formal sector? To try to understand, it's not only employment. We can say that unemployment rate is declining by 1% or 2% or going up by 2% or 4%. The question is, we have to look at this dimension also, because I'm not focusing more on COVID, actually discussed on COVID. So this is the background. This is not only the employment data, the structure of employment, their sectoral share, and the quality of employment is equally important. If we want to look in the long-term perspective, I'm giving one example. If you look at the this labor force survey 17-18, it mentions increase in the population of self-employment and decline in casual labor in rural areas. If I read in a layman language, in a layman, or students are reading it, we visualize that people have money, they are leaving casual labor work and going for self-employment. Or I am not interested in working in petty jobs, I am want to be self-employed. The question I'm raising is, does it imply upsurge in the remunerative self-employment opportunity to which workers working as a casual labor is shifted? कि क्या वर्कर ये फील कर रहा है कि मेरे पास सेल्फ एम्प्लॉयमेंट की रेम्यूनरेटिव अपॉर्चुनिटी अवेलेबल है, इसलिए मैं कैजुअल लेबर से बाहर आऊं? और क्या ये सजेस्ट करता है that employment opportunity in future is going to be self-employed category? ये ट्रेंड क्या मुझे बार बताने को इंडिकेट कर रहा है कि फ्यूचर में कैजुअल लेबर is not a issue. People are going to move towards self-employment. And we say self-employment, और लास्ट इसमें हम बात करते हैं कि कहीं ऐसा तो नहीं है कि जो वेज लेबर था, जो वेज वर्कर्स था, जहां एम्प्लॉयमेंट अपॉर्चुनिटी थी, उनमें तो श्रिंकेज नहीं हो रहा है, तब वो मजबूरी में आगे बात करता है कि मुझे कुछ काम चाहिए और कुछ काम के लिए मेरे पास क्या है, सेल्फ एम्प्लॉयमेंट. तो रिमेंबर कि इन चीजों को मुझे एनालाइज करना जरूरी है कि whenever we study these things, so these all questions arise when we look at any indication. Now, coming to this, before going to the corona effect, what is the challenge before us? The challenge is not created by corona. This challenge already existed before COVID-19. This is the people, or this is the number of people who are to be absorbed in new and better jobs. Means we have to create employment for so many people, and this number is 11.7 crore people are in the working age group. I'm not saying that they are asking for employment, because they may be a student or doing something else. But one thing is very clear that 11.7 crore people are ready for employment. Out of them, 1.3 crore are obviously unemployed. That is the surplus labor. 5.2 crore, when I say redundant, if these people stop working or they are out of their job or whatever they are working, it is not going to have any effect on economy. So they are redundant labor in the sense we are working for the sake of work, but we do not have employment as such. And third, I am adding, which is not added generally, 5.2 crore women out of workforce. Generally, female working sitting at home, the number is 5.2 crore, but they are have equal right to ask for employment. So if you work out the whole 11.7 crore, the 78% are women in that total. So this is the number we have to look. In addition to this, every year, this is the again estimate, the 60 to 80 lakh youths are going to enter the workforce every year for next decade and a half, that is 15 years. So almost for 14, 15 years, 60 to 80 lakhs youth will be asking for jobs every year. And it is not for 1 year, it is for almost 15 years. This is what certainly this can be converted into demographic dividend. Also, there's certainly a question mark. There's opportunity before us. Now the challenge is, if we want to fulfill this demand, we need to create 1.6 crore new jobs every year for next 15 years. 1.6 crore jobs every year. This is not the creation of jobs in Narega. This is a creation of a proper job, better job. And अगला constraint हमारे पास जो सबसे बड़ा constraint है, almost 70% of people in this category are low or medium skilled. When I say low or medium skilled, either they are not able to do any work or they can do some work. And I want to add here one more thing. I can count university graduates also here, because university graduates generally working in traditional courses do not have any skill for the market. Remember, they might be having a skill to crack a competitive exam for a government job, but they do not have a skill for asking job or doing job as required by the private sector who can create jobs. And worst part is that with higher economic growth, the employment elasticity is declining. We are getting higher employment, higher economic growth, but employment elasticity is not increasing. When employment elasticity is not increasing, but certainly the growth is not going to increase the rate of employment. That is also an indication. Now, if we want to fulfill this challenge, this is the employment survey forecast is that if we want to require or fulfill this, achieve this challenge, the rate of growth in jobs in organized sector, not inorganized, organized sector has to be higher than the rate of growth of labor force by a substantial margin so that we can cover the backlog also. And labor productivity in unorganized sector must grow. When labor productivity in organized sector is increasing, certainly employment opportunity can increase or income of labor can increase. Then again, I'm coming back with the same question, employability. That we may be 11.6 crore people who are maybe asking for jobs, but the question is the employability. When we say employability, this is the demand-supply mismatch. We are supplying graduates, but they are not as per the requirement or as per the requirement for creating demand. And the demand is the corporate or other sectors who are creating demand or private sector creating demand. This is the region that is the unemployment rate amongst the educated people is rising at a fast pace. And last challenge remains improving the quality of existing jobs. Quality is very important aspect. In India, the quality of jobs is certainly poor, very poor. And why this informality matters, I'm coming to that. When you come to COVID effect, the plight of informal worker is absolutely visible. जब कोरोना आया तो we see two cases, one India and हम सभी लोग घर के अंदर बंद थे. हमने अपना दिन में भी गेट पे लॉक लगा के रखा था, कोई घर में अंदर नहीं आ जाए, कोई नॉक नहीं करे. The reason is कि there was virus and we were, उस समय हम लोगों के पास इतनी अवेयरनेस नहीं थी कि किस टाइप का वायरस है, क्या प्रिकॉशन है. So we went into lockdown. So we were all closed inside the house. Who were on the roads? These informal workers, जिनको हमने नाम दिया साहब migratory workers हैं, but they are workers, they are employed people. But what is the difference? I am employed. जिसको migratory worker कहते हैं, he is also employed, but he is on the road and I am sitting in my air-conditioned house. So that is the difference between informality and formal sector. So that's why I'm saying the quality of employment is very important. Why those people work on road? Because they have minimum basic savings to survive for a limited period. When they were unemployed or thrown out of job without any social security, they had no other option but to move out, to go to their native places so that at least they can get food, because in agriculture can support, at least they can give you food. Then certainly inferior working conditions I have already mentioned. As far as the social security cover, I have already mentioned that is very clear during the corona period. It's not the government tried its best, but that was unprecedented situation. So this social security cover was given, but that was not that strong. Then if you look at the economic survey 15-16, they say that wages in organized sector are 20 times higher on an average in comparison of a formal sector. So look at the disparity. Person getting 20 times higher wage in a formal sector in comparison in formal sector. This is for doing same job. Because हम लोग university college से हैं, so we can visualize, because if I visualize at my university, we have 900 plus contract workers. That is the people hired through service agency. Same person is computer operator, same person is working as peon. One is getting a salary of 6,000 rupees and the permanent peon is getting a salary of 40,000 rupees. So that is the difference. And now the question comes, कि अगर हम इसी हालत में रहते हैं, are they capable of building a robust economy? The people 90% people employed like this, are they able to create a robust economy or quickly rebuild an economy which is shattered by the COVID-19? Now we come to the COVID effect. I will take some time, little bit more time. If you go to the most conservative forecast of economy, that is World Bank. Professor Mehndi said, some people are saying 5%, some people are saying 10%. So I have gone for most conservative. In 2021, India is going to contract by 3.2%. This is the forecast from World Bank. Next year, we will have moderate recovery of 3.1% growth. This meaning is the same, what Professor Mehndi said, that GDP is going to be stagnant. When we say GDP is going to be stagnant, in next year GDP is going to be less than the GDP of 1920. जो 1920 के अंदर जो GDP थी, उससे भी कम GDP हमारे पास आएगी 21-22 के अंदर. So that is the effect. Now, what is the effect of this decline in GDP or contraction in real life? It is a clear indication that jobs are going to be lost and there is to be drop in incomes of people. But one thing positive, there is contraction in agriculture, not expected. and there is not going to be reduction in public sector expenditure. Public sector expenditure is going to rise. If we see the share of these two sectors, that is agriculture and public sector, in gross GBA, value added, it comes around 30%. It means the 70% sector is going to affect, but 30% sector is protected. And for the rest, there is non-government, non-agriculture. It is again a forecast. In 2021, it is going to, the contraction is going to be 7.2%. Next year, it is a growth of 1.4%. This is economic forecast. After this, again, this contraction have different impact on different sectors. All sectors will not be affected equally. Obviously, sectors will be depending on employment elasticity of the sector, and states will be affected also. They will be this effect will vary from state to state. I have given this PLFS data on GVA. If you take construction sector, it is 8% and 12%. 8% share in GVA, employment in 12%. If you take financial services, real estate and professional services, the share in GVA is 22% in place of 8% of construction, and employment share is only 3.2%. So it's a common sense that certainly equal value output loss in construction and the second sector, the construction is going to suffer more in terms of providing employment in construction in comparison to financial services and other, because this is what I say is the employment elasticity. Construction has the highest employment elasticity. Second, trade, hotels, transport, storage, communication, again higher employment elasticity. Financial services, real estate, professional, other services, again higher. Manufacturing, but these all are affected by COVID. Whether you go for construction, whether you go for trade and hotel, transport, financial services certainly are recovering, but real estate is an issue. Manufacturing has always been an issue for a long time. So the sectors which have positive, high employment elasticity, they are suffering severely from COVID. So certainly these sectors are going to go for more job losses. If you look at the poverty forecast, again the forecast says that is a UN forecast, that is it is going to be a long-lasting effect. Again, the intensity of severity is going shift back to South Asia and East Asia. That is East Asia and South Asia are again going to be the epicenter of poverty, and India is going to be one of them. फिर हम वापस बात करते हैं कि अगर per capita income में और consumption expenditure में there is a reduction of 5% or 10% or 20% due to COVID, what is going to be the situation? Whatever guess you take, whether it's the 5% reduction in consumption expenditure or 10% or 20%, India tops the list in global poverty after COVID. So COVID, this whatever contraction you take, 5%, 20%, India is going to be on the top, and we are likely to add almost 115 million in 5% case, 238 million in 10% case, and 526 in 20% case. And if you look at this figure, this we have taken 5%, 10% hit, and 20% hit. This is how that obviously how per capita consumption is going to be reduced. That's a question for future. But one thing is clear, with COVID or after COVID, whenever it is over, India is going to have a very large number or add very large number of poor people in various category. I have not gone into classification. That is the $1.9. This is the $1.9, $3.2 per capita, and 5. जो World Bank ने define कर रखा है कि 3 category of poverty. $1.9 level per day per person, $5.5 per person per level, and $3.2 per person per day. So these are the three categories which the number is going to change. Now, these forecasts considers only the income loss or the addition in number only due to the COVID. But if you look at the Ayushman Bharat report says that every year the out-of-pocket health expenditure due to out-of-pocket health expenditure or high out-of-pocket health expenditure in India, almost 66 crore people enter into poverty every year. वो तो यहाँ का रहेगा मीन जो हेल्थ एक्सपेंडिचर है आउट ऑफ पॉकेट हेल्थ एक्सपेंडिचर है that is not going to change in COVID period, or if going to change, it is going to be higher. So that the last forecast we have seen the diagram, that is only for income losses, and 6 crore per year people may add on. If we believe the data of Ayushman Bharat, which should be, then certainly due to out of pocket health expenditure. न्यू जो नए लोग जो पॉवर्टी में ऐड खाएंगे जिन स्टेट्स के अंदर कंट्री के अंदर, अब उनमें स्टेट वाइज अगर आप जाते हैं, more than 50% people who are going additional poverty is going to be in Bihar, UP, Maharashtra, West Bengal, MP. and फिर आप हमें ध्यान रखने की जरूरत है कि जब हम रिवर्स माइग्रेशन की बात करते हैं कोविड के बाद, रिवर्स माइग्रेशन भी इन्हीं स्टेट से है या इन्हीं स्टेट में है. रिवर्स माइग्रेशन मैक्सिमम इन यूपी जहां लौट के वापस लोग आए हैं, बिहार और राजस्थान. तो जिन स्टेट्स में पॉवर्टी का कंसंट्रेशन होगा उन्हीं स्टेट्स में लोग माइग्रेट होने के बाद वापस लौट के गए हैं. एंड न्यू डायमेंशन वी हैव टू सी आफ्टर कोविड और ड्यूरिंग कोविड इज दैट इज राइज इन अर्बन पॉवर्टी, which we always neglected because our focus has been on rural poverty. Now we will have a new issue that how to deal with urban poverty also. So that is going to come up. Now, obviously the loss of suggestion has been given in the past in various webinars, seminars that government should do this, government go for public expenditure, government should do this. But again, I'm looking for the long-term perspective. The long-term perspective is one thing, we need to think of a policy framework, how to make growth inclusive or how to diversify the economic growth. It should go to various sectors, and people who are on the bottom, they are to be included, not through doles, but by productive contribution. Obviously, we have been arguing for a longer time that agriculture has a surplus labor, so people should be moving from agriculture to manufacturing. So manufacturing should be growing, but we know that in India the manufacturing sector is stagnant for a long time. So expecting from manufacturing sector, particularly from large-scale industries, it seems very difficult that we are going to absorb labor in near future. Then we come to good old agriculture sector. Again, we are coming back to the rural areas. And I say this very emphatically, that we might be, the newspaper highlight must be that X corporate, Y corporate, Z corporate, but agriculture has never been in limelight. But in Corona period, this agriculture sector has proven that we have, at least for survival, ensure the survival of the people. Now, if we are looking for additional jobs in agriculture sector, which is already overpopulated, then certainly question comes that diversification of agriculture has to take place. And when we say diversification, because at present, almost 68-69% our focus is on food grains. We are just ignoring the horticulture, the organic crops, livestock. So in ancillary units. So remember, the migratory workers who have reached their villages, they have some skill or they can be provided a skill, and Rajasthan is one of the pioneers in Rajasthan, actually, the people who migrated from other states, government of Rajasthan has gone for skill mapping. What type of work they can do, where they can be employed. Obviously, then government of Rajasthan is visualizing like this, possibly they will not be going back in a short period because majority of people have come from Maharashtra and other states. So we should be thinking where they can be employed in a productive employment. When again, we have to look at agriculture. Diversification is the one issue. Livestock is another issue. And then when Prime Minister says, Atmanirbhar Bharat or vocal for local, and Corona also emphasizes on that. When we went into lockdown, the state border was sealed. The Rajasthan cannot go to UP, UP cannot go to Bihar. All borders were sealed. That is, in supplies, you were depending on local supplies only. So if we had manufacturing unit in local areas, they could have supplied basic needs in a shorter period, and still is preferable. It was sometime if you see in a vision document 2020, which was prepared by Planning Commission, it again emphasized that local manufacturing has to take place. So the people work in factories or in these units, and in the evening they can go back home. So that model is to be worked out if we looking for the long term. Another factor which Corona has proved, that we were looking for help, or the poor people were looking for help, and who can be the help provider? The local bodies or Panchayati Raj or the Sarpanch or Pradhan, where these migratory people have reached. But we do not have any data कि इस गांव से आदमी migrate होके कहाँ गया है, who is poor, what type of services he needs. So decentralization of policy has to take. Some role is for the government, central government, some roles for the state government, and Panchayati Raj institutions are to be strengthened. And that again remind me, and that may be the one of the reason. Then Prime Minister spoke to 2.5 lakh PRI representatives during Corona period, because they were the people who were at the helm of affairs at the local level and were able to provide help to these migrant people, or who are the people who are suffering, whether in cities, local urban bodies, or in rural areas. That was the big task with them. Obviously, if you are looking for this type of infrastructure, then we need to provide these public goods in rural areas. Why people are running away? Because they say that public good provision is not proper in rural areas. That has to be. And last, that is next point I'm going for Skilling India. And Skilling India, certainly I will appreciate. That is till 2014, there was a skill development mission under Prime Minister office. And for 10 or 12 years, if I remember correctly, nothing substantial happened. And with the new government, they have gone for a Ministry of Skill Development. It's a huge figure, the people who are to be skilled, but day by day, skilled people number is day by day rising. If I'm skilled, certainly I can get better job, or I can be the go for employment. And the last I will go, that is how we need to re-examine in the social protection system. Social protection system is the biggest exposure during the Corona period, or when we go for social protection, now we started talking of increase the income of people. और आप direct benefit की बात करिए, direct benefit transfer की बात करिए, जो भी आप बात करना चाहें. Now, universal basic income, bit Dr. Subramanian covered in his economic survey, and now Karthik Muralidharan is talking of inclusive growth dividend, IGD model. Universal basic income, a minimum amount should be given to all people, irrespective of rich or poor, but partial universal basic income we have implemented, or state governments have also implemented when they are helping the farmers. We can say it's a partial UBI. But Professor Muralidharan says that is in this inclusive growth dividend, you need to transfer minimum possible amount in the account of all Indian citizens. He mentioned it can be 120 rupees, 140 rupees, 150 rupees, or say 500 rupees. So if 500 rupees come to my account, it does not make much difference in me. But if 500 rupees going to the account of the poor, it makes a difference. So until unless you identify who are the real poor, who are the real sufferers, these models are being debated. And to implement these models, the most important part is that your database has to be very strong. And database has to be strong, not at the national level, at the local level, so that we know what is the status at the local level or the ground level where things are to be implemented. Here I stop here. Thank you very much for giving me opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir, for sharing your profound knowledge with us. Your session was full of zeal and valuable information. So we have started to get some questions. As you know, we have decided to take them up after the lecture by the second distinguished speaker. I would like to reiterate that you may continue to type your questions in the chat box. The next distinguished speaker to honor us with her presence is Professor Ravi Kiran. I call upon Mr. Piyush Tripathi, Assistant Professor, Department of Political Science, to provide her introduction to the audience. Over to you, Piyush, sir. Piyush, sir, do I have you? You may unmute your mic, sir.
Yeah, sorry, I have not unmuted my mic. Thank you very much, Bhavneet sir. Good evening and happy Janmashtami to all. Uh, Professor Ravi Kiran is currently serving as professor in School of Humanities and Social Sciences at Thapar Institute of Engineering and Technology, Patiala, Punjab. She was former professor in charge of alumni relations. She graduated with honors in English, masters in economics, masters in English, MPhil in economics, and PhD in industrial management. She has an enviable track record of research experience. She has more than 130 papers published in refereed journals and more than 70 papers in national and international conferences. She has authored 2 books, the latest being Changing Perspectives and Paradigms in Business and Behavioral Sciences. She has completed 7 research projects, including those funded by AICTE, ICSSR, and UGC. She is currently working on the project funded by Department of Science and Technology, Government of India. She has been on editorial board of Sage Open and reviewer of many journals listed in SSCI, Thomas Reuters. She has guided 28 PhD students. She has traveled widely in many countries, including Ireland, Netherlands, Australia, France, Switzerland, Singapore, Dubai, Hong Kong, and Bangkok for academic assignments, presenting papers, and as keynote speaker in international conferences. She has organized 9 conferences and seminars and 25 short-term training programs. She has been part of more than 40 invited talks. Her co-authored paper, Analyzing Consumer Satisfaction, Users' Perspective Towards Online Shopping, Nankai Business Review International, was selected as Outstanding Paper in 2018 Emerald Literary Awards. Thank you very much, ma'am, for providing us opportunity to hear you. Over to you, Mr. Bhavneet.
Thank you, Piyush, sir. I now call upon Professor Ravi Kiran to enlighten us on the topic she has chosen for us, resurgence of Indian manufacturing and education sector in post-COVID period. Over to you, ma'am.
Very good evening to present for the webinar, and it's an extremely honorable to be here with all of you. And my special thanks to Indian Economic Organization for organizing this webinar in collaboration with the Devanagari College, that's a postgraduate college. So it's a topic which needs to be mentioned and which needs to be discussed upon. And the more we discuss, the more we think about what could be the possible solutions and where will Indian economy be heading towards. So we have had an initial talk, and I'm going to talk on resurgence of Indian manufacturing and education sector in post-COVID period. I'm Professor Ravi Kiran, Head School of Humanities and Social Sciences, and I have been introduced, so I will not go into the details. So I would like to thank the organizers for providing an opportunity, especially thanks to the principal, Dr. Mamta, and Professor Atveer Singh, who has contacted me for this particular webinar. All the dignitaries of Indian Economic Association for providing a forum to interact and discuss on this current topic. Before starting off with the presentation, I would like to initiate with the quote from Professor Amartya Sen. Economic growth without investment in human development is unsustainable and unethical. So we must start with this particular quote that is given by Amartya Sen. We have all had a scenario of what has COVID led to. Currently, if we go by the figures of today, so more than 23 lakh people in India have had been in the active numbers of COVID-19, and we have also had 46,000 deaths. So this means that the recovery seen yet is not certain. The reason for this is that we don't have a cure for COVID in the current scenario, and moreover the vaccines that are to come, we may not have a vaccine currently that may be available. So although Russia has come out with a vaccine, but it is still said that it may take another 2 to 3 months to reach us. So in view of this, I would like to focus my discussion on Indian economy, especially on the manufacturing sector and the education sector. As has been heard from the earlier speakers, the Indian manufacturing, we all know, is not performing very well, and there have been complications that are listed. If we go by the overall growth, then we say that manufacturing may be growing, but if we go by the total factor productivity growth, the total factor productivity growth basically is very, very low for Indian manufacturing sector. So it shows that the total factor productivity growth has to be improved if we are to move over to better situation in the future. If we go by the industrial production, the industrial production is depicting a negative figure of minus 18.3. So it plunged to 18.3% year on year in March 2020. So if we look at the decline, this is in fact the steepest decline since the records began in 1994, and it's much worse than what was expected. The reason for this is undoubtedly the COVID-19, which has aggravated the situation. If we go by the manufacturing production only in India, and it is also showing a minus negative, that is 22.4, and it decreased so much and in the March 2020. So that means if we go by the earlier scenario, this decline that is visible in the industrial production as well as the manufacturing production is something that we need to ponder about and think about what could be the solution to these problems that have been aggravated by COVID. If we go by the financial or the sector-wise analysis, the financial or the real estate and the professional services, they are showing a negative GVA of minus 17.3%, the mining and quarrying minus 14.7%, electricity, gas minus 13.9%. If we go by overall gross value added, that is minus 9.3%, manufacturing minus 6.3%. Of course, as we say, agriculture has not been affected that, but there are certain sectors, the maximum impact is on the financial sector and the real estate and the professional services. Job recovery, is job recovery on the scene? If we go by the CMIE data, then they estimated a mind-boggling 122 million jobs that were lost in the economy, and the unemployment rate hit more than 27%. So the job recovery is a mild increase that has been shown in the week that ended on July 5. That is the change that we are seeing. But of course, this is depicting that in the near future, we will yet have to see a scene where the job growth rate is going to be very slow. The last presentation, it has been highlighted that what is going to be the implications on the unemployment and what is the employment scenario has been beautifully depicted by the keynote speaker. So I won't go into the details of that. Coming back to Indian manufacturing, COVID-19 lockdown has put a lot of pressure on the manufacturing industry to increase the sales. But this sector, if we have a look, that the sectors contributed almost 20% of the GDP. And from this, the maximum contribution generally came from the automotive sector. And we all know the state of affairs that automotive sector is currently into. The automotive sector plays a very vital role in the growth of the economy, but the virus, that is COVID-19, has shaken this auto industry very badly. But if we look at the scene before COVID-19, or before the lockdown, the automotive industry was in a bad shape earlier also, and the recent lockdown aggravated the problems that further increased for this sector. So what could be the options that are available? Before coming to the options, let us see where we are currently. If you go by the total vehicle sales in India, they decreased to almost 10 lakh from 16 lakhs. So that is again a scene that has to be seen. If we go by the latest car manufacturing, there has been some increase in the last year, but still the buyers are a little hesitant, and the buying power is also affected by the COVID-19 scenario. So due to the lockdown, the bike, scooter and car manufacturers had to shut down their factories for weeks. the workers went back to their native places and they are a little hesitant of coming back to the jobs also. And moreover, the factories are also not working to the 100% extent. So the majority of manufacturers, they are experiencing a breakdown due to their supply chain of parts and raw material. The reason for this was our extreme reliance upon China. Now, what could be the solution that we can offer not only to the automotive industry, but maybe to the entire manufacturing sector? Some say that the 3D printing service is needed to pull back the automotive sector. The automotive industry was facing demands for newer, better performing vehicles, as well as the need to optimize production and streamline the supply chain and the logistics. So this was a scenario. So one technology that could help out there is the 3D printing. 3D printing is in fact leading to the cost effectiveness, and the focus now has to be on lean manufacturing. And the advantage will be felt not by the automotive, but by the defense, healthcare, and aerospace sector who go in for 3D printing. Then the next option is moving over to the Internet of Things. The Internet of Things in manufacturing is on the rise because it leads to reduction in the cost of hardware and software components, including sensors, cloud computing, and analytics tools. So that is why the next option is that we have to go in for digital transformation, without which the survival will become very difficult. AI is another area which is entering, and we have to embrace the automation to stay relevant in the long run. So if we talk of AI-driven machines, they add significant value to the manufacturing process as they enable automation of tasks and enhance the production efficiency and bring machine interaction closer to human beings. So that is why it is another area that we need to focus upon. Then the next, as we all know, is the robotics manufacturing. Robots, we all know, can play a very vital role in optimizing assembly, and this robo basically will be the robotic technology, the new technology which needs to be adopted to enhance the skill as well as to provide a competitive edge to the workforce. So that is another need that we need to focus upon in the current scenario, in case we are to improve the efficiency or productivity of the manufacturing sector. So the solution is that we otherwise put all the eggs in one basket. That means we completely relied upon China. So sole reliance upon China is what is making other countries also thinking of how they can diversify their sources of raw material as well as the sources of supply. Let me cite one particular example here. We all may have heard of the story of Red Riding Hood. Red Riding Hood had to pass through a jungle to reach her grandma's place. So this Red Riding Hood, if we say she's carrying 12 eggs in one basket and she has to pass through the jungle, and if she is attacked by the wolf, then there's a possibility that none of the eggs will reach the grandma's place. Now, instead of one Red Riding Hood, if we have 12 Red Riding Hoods, each carrying one egg in one basket, so there will be a possibility of at least 50% of the eggs reaching to the grandma's place. So that means at least 6 eggs will reach. So this is the beauty of diversification. When we try to diversify, or when the firms they try to diversify not only in terms of the market, but also in terms of the sources of the raw material. It will be advantageous for the firms also, because their supply will not be disrupted. And like the disruptions in the supply chain, which were faced by the manufacturing sector, will not be there if we move over to this scenario. And we have another example. As a very bold step, Japan had announced a package of $2.2 billion to Japanese manufacturers to help them relocate their overseas factories, including bringing them back home. Maybe this is one situation where other countries can also step in this direction, and which will help the economies in somewhat overcoming the harm that COVID has done. So it is expected that other companies may follow suit, and maybe we can say, like Vietnam, India may also have this golden opportunity. Vietnam has been able to capture a lot of investors to come to their economy and shift their bases to Vietnam from China. This is evident by the later study, which I'll be quoting a little later on. If we go by, is Make in India the solution? Of course, Make in India is a campaign that was launched in India in 2014 by our Prime Minister, Mr. Narendra Modi. The disorder from COVID-19, in fact, has offered India maybe a time where it can reinvent itself as a manufacturing powerhouse. But do we have the facilities is something that we have to think and we have to talk about. Due to the epidemic and the trade war between USA and China, maybe this may be feasible, but infrastructure facilities and the other facilities will have to be provided. So wooing the foreign investors, PM Narendra Modi is hoping to garner a hopping $330 billion by wooing foreign investors to make in India. As we had listened earlier from the speakers, the buy local, be global mantra is also aimed at being self-reliant. That means we focus upon Atmanirbhar Bharat. Now, moving over to the pragmatics of what is happening. If we go by the study that has been done by Nomura, the Japanese financial group, the destination for the company remains either in the East and in the Southeast Asia. Nomura found that 56 companies, they moved their bases from China in 2018 and 19. And Vietnam got 26 of them, Taiwan got 11, and Thailand got 8 of them. And only 3 companies shifted their base to India. So this is the current situation that is there. So global FDI forecasts also show a decrease up to the extent of 40% in 2020 and from the earlier value of $1.54 trillion. So it is said that companies are interested in sourcing the automobile components and electronic products from India, according to some industry executives. But till yet, we can say any concrete decision in this regard has not been taken. Moving over to another important sector which is affected is that the Indian pharmaceutical industry. If we look at the Indian pharmaceutical industry, the Indian pharmaceutical industry did perform very well, especially in the 1970s onward, because this was a period when the industries, they went in for reverse engineering and process patenting, and were able to produce the products by a different process. But now if we go by the latest WTO norms or by the TRIPS agreement that we have had implemented since 1994, we have to shift over to the new intellectual property rights. And this makes it that the companies have to move over to the innovative drug manufacturing. So what is the scenario here is India may expect to win over US companies involved in healthcare products and services, and is also in talks with Medtronic PLC and Abbott Laboratories on relocating their units to India. But again, the concrete decision in this regard is yet to be taken. So we are uncertain about what will be the prevailing scenario in this regard. If we go by the sales growth of the basic therapies that has been there in India, we see that the maximum sales growth had been for the respiratory drugs, followed by the cardiac drugs and the anti-diabetic drugs. So this is the only scenario which is showing a rising scene. But on other fronts, we have failed, and we are reporting that there is a negative growth in most of the sectors. Now, going by these scenarios, can we say India can do it? If we go by the past 2 decades, China has served as a global production hub, and multiple industries had their manufacturing in China, be it the electronics industry, textile industry, medical devices, or automotive. What were the reason for that was that high availability of raw material, technological innovation, business-friendly laws, and accessibility to skilled labor. So we can see that where do we lag and where do we have to provide the future scenario. Of course, we'll have to work on the business-friendly laws, because till yet it takes time to get the clearances if the industries are talking of getting the licensing and operating in India. Now, the next factor that I'm going to take is the education, and we are going to consider the education sector. So being from the education sector, I'm deeply concerned with what is going to be the future for education in India. And if we go by the figures that have been cited by All India Council for Technical Education, which were on Monday, that's July 27, it reported that 179 professional colleges, including engineering colleges and business schools, shut down in India in the academic year, that's 2021. The reason for this was a lack of job opportunities and the lockdown, which was imposed due to coronavirus or SARS-2 or COVID-19 outbreak. The AICT data also showed that the number of closures that have been there in this year is the highest if we look at the data for the past 9 years. And it is almost twice the number that was reported in the earlier year, that's 2019 and 20. Another grave situation is that the AICT data revealed that 134 more institutions did not seek approval from the government for fresh batches in this academic session, sending a clear message that the outbreak has badly affected the higher education sector. So looking at this dismal scenario, it shows that what needs to be done in terms of the education sector. And the same situation is also depicted by the UNESCO figures, where we say that this is the number of the person that are affected learners, and coming to the females and the male ratio is that. So again, this is a situation where we need to think and we need to ponder about and provide a visible solution. What could be the solution for this? Impact of COVID-19 on the education sector, we face some threats. One is a threat that is a technology challenge. The technology challenge is that the pandemic has significantly disrupted the higher education sector, which is a critical determinant of the economy's economic future as well. So the growth of the economy is dependent upon the higher education sector, which has been deeply impacted by the COVID-19. So here that means the post-COVID period, technology has to play a very important part. Through this technology, this webinar is organized. Maybe I'm able to reach to 125 people who are attending this webinar. So that shows maybe I'll be able to reach more people, but this will be only possible to those who have the access to technology. But there are some government schools as well as the low income private schools which may not be able to adopt the online teaching method, and hence that's the reason that we saw the closure of not only the schools and colleges but many professional colleges also have been closed down. Another challenge that we face is that the students from India used to go abroad and seek admissions in United States of America, United Kingdom, Canada, China, Australia. The future now is a little uncertain because we do not know what may happen. America has been hit hard by coronavirus, and there have been certain delays in the admission, or the people who wanted to go there are a little afraid that should they be going for the admissions to another country or not. So if this trend continues for the future, this may be leading to a decline in the demand for international higher education also. It will also have the impact upon the current admission that are there in the institutions that are able to adopt technology. Like if we talk of the Thapar Institute, we are able to have access to the latest technology, which may be providing some of the more opportunities to students to shift to these institutions. But again, a lot of institutions may not be able to bear the brunt. Another issue in the education sector is the employment challenges. So we often read in the paper and through this that there are very few employment offers that are given in the latest scenario. And if we go by the this scenario, there are low or no job offers that are there. So another reason is that even if the job offers were there, they are withdrawn from many of the corporate sectors. The reason is that is aggravating the situation to further high level of unemployment rate that is felt in the economy. So again, moving over, e-learning we all know is here to stay. There's a need to redesign the course content if we have to meet the current as well as the future needs. There will be a shift from the traditional pedagogies needed, but it is a difficult task. So when we are going through the online mode, one of the things that I'm seeing is that there's an annotation going on by some of the people who feel that we don't we go in for this. This is also one part of a learning technique, that you are at least doing this to see what is happening on the scenario. Post-pandemic times could see a blend of e-learning and mainstream face-to-face teaching with a boost from the traditional universities, and a shift towards a tech-savvy university. So that's a future scenario that is depicted. Coming over to summing up the scene, if we go by the opportunities that may be there in the near future, I'm taking this data of the 2016, which is predicting a growth rate that may be visible by 2025. Of course, it has been somewhat affected by the scene in 2019 and 20, and it's going to be continued in 2021 as well. But still yet, we can say there's a huge consumer market, which is expected to be 3.6 trillion by 2025. And the substantial GDP growth, where we are saying that maybe the growth rate is going to be stagnant for 2 to 3 years. So the implication may be slightly reduced impact from that which has been projected. Of course, we also have the advantage of being the youngest nation. The average age in 2025 is going to be 29 years. There's going to be upward mobility, 150 more added to the middle class, that is by 2025. The literacy rate is going to improve. There is financial inclusion and inclusion in the banking system, with more accounts being opened up. But this is not the only scene, that opening up the accounts is not a solution to the problem. We have to go deeper into it. And deregulation or the change in the laws is again what has to be predicted. The pillars of the new resurgent India will be the new processes here, ease of doing business. Improvement in this has been seen. GST, there are both the aspects of it, the pros as well as the cons. Demonetization, many people think that demonetization has brought more harm, but demonetization is also something that has led to future shift towards the electronic mode. So that way it is considered to be advantageous. If we talk of the new sectors, then we need major FDI reforms as well as the inflows of FDI. New approach will be Make in India, Digital India, Skill India, but they have to be functional and they have to perform. New infrastructure has to be improved, and we have to provide the key infrastructure as well as urbanization. New innovation and R&D, India has to focus upon design and innovation. Startup India may be one of the solutions where the people come up with the startup ideas and at least they are able to provide jobs to themselves as well as to some others as well. So intellectual property rights of late by the efforts by R.A. Mashelkar or R. Saha, there was some improvement in the IPRs, but still we have to perform a lot more in the scene in terms of intellectual property rights. Moreover, the change that is needed is we need to have a new mindset and we have to move from red tape to red carpet. If we go by the ease of doing business, the Indian scenario, we jumped to 77th rank from the 190 countries that were there in the year 2018. And the rank also improved in the 2019, where from 77, we moved over to the 63rd rank. But again, this year it is predicted that the scene may not be that good for India, but it does show some efforts that have been done in terms of improving the ease of doing business in India. The Atmanirbhar Bharat, there are certain steps which have been mentioned. I would just focus upon a few steps that are there. Especially, I like this idea of ranking of states on investment attractiveness to compete for new investments. As we have heard earlier, that we need new investments, and the states, if they compete to attract the new investment, it will show that what can be done by the states to bring the investment to their areas. Of course, it also needs the incentive schemes for promotion of new champion sectors that will be launched in the sectors such as solar PV manufacturing, advanced cell battery storage, etc. So, but the fast track is another thing that needs to be undertaken, and it has to be empowered group to the empowered group of the secretaries. Similarly, the project development cell also has to prepare for the investable projects and coordinate with the investors both at the central as well as at the state level government. Then we also talk of the other steps that will be needed for infrastructure improvement, enhancement at the sectoral level as well as the state level, and the government at the center for providing a help in those cases. So that will only bring the investment, or Atmanirbhar Bharat can only be successful if these are implemented, and these are successfully, if they are successfully implemented. Many times we say India has very good policies, but we fail on the implementation level. So that is what has to be seen and what has to be improved. So I would like to end with a quote from Ratan Tata. I always try to end with a positive note, although this is not a time to say that we have something which is a visible future, but we have to see beyond what is currently being visible to see what can happen in the future. So the current health crisis is a time to support our own innovativeness, invest in it, and not dismiss something as being too far out, but being something we should look at. So this is a Ratan Tata's quote, where he always see that something which could be possible, which could be feasible, we all have to work and think in those directions to make it possible, so that India comes out of this recessionary phase and the impact of the COVID-19 is reduced on Indian economy. Taking some minor steps by the educational institutions for providing the startups to have their own businesses could provide some solution to the problem of unemployment, as well as starting up where we can see on how the rural sector can also be embedded into these streams. So that is what we should look into in this particular direction. So that's all what I wanted to share with you, and that's from my side. Thank you all. I would like to extend my thanks to the Indian Economic Association organizers, as well as the organization of the DN College, who have provided me this forum to share my views with you. And I'm seeing there are a lot of questions in the chat box that have been full of a lot of questions. And maybe I would hand over to Bhavneet Singh Batra, who initially started off the session. And whatever is there to handle the question answer session, you can suggest. Thank you all.
Thank you very much, ma'am. That was really an amazing and remarkable speech. Thank you, ma'am, for sharing your great knowledge with us. It was a delight to hear you. Now we come to the questions hour. Owing to the, well, we have received a lot of questions, but owing to the paucity of time, it will not be possible to take up all the questions. We have tried to do a broad classification of the questions that we have received so far. Still, because there are some questions here which are somewhat similar, still we shall not be able to cover all of them. So apologies to some of the viewers. But I shall give one set of questions to each speaker to answer in brief. So one set of questions is for Professor Vijay Veer Singh says that we have recently seen unprecedented levels of human migration across the country. If we talk about this weaker section of the society, what do you think about their return to the mainstream economy? This question was asked by Ankita, and the same question that migrated labor are now going back to the cities for their job settlement again. So do you think this will be easy for them to get back to the same life as before? Professor Singh, over to you.
Thank you, Apni. The basic issue is, which I said, I think during my talk also, that migratory workers are not returning to the cities very soon. The reason is the states from where they have migrated, like Maharashtra and particularly the cities like Mumbai, Pune and other cities, Gujarat, states in South, they are not performing well or they are still suffering severely with Corona. And second aspect is, once I leave the place of my work or I am dislocated, it is not easy to settle down with the newer environment because now they have to start from scratch. Where they are going to work, where that work is going to start, where they are going to live, whether their rented accommodation is available or not. It's not an easy task to settle down again. So for some time, certainly they are going to stay back. In certain states, like in states like in Rajasthan and all, some people are returning back because in some areas manufacturing is starting. So it will be a long drawn process. It will not be very soon. Thank you. Thank you, Apni. I am done.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir. Now I shall give one set of similar looking questions to Professor Ravi Kiran. Ma'am, the question is, it's very relevant and it's in the hearts and minds of everybody that private schools are trying, but the government schools are still lagging behind in terms of online teaching. So will a holistic, complete country-wise online education system be ever possible in India? That's the question now.
Yeah, I have read a few questions which are almost similar to this one. But in my lecture also, I pointed out that there's a difference in the government and the private sector. Of course, whenever we say the private sector has to perform, so if they have to get the tuition fee and if they have to get the other aspects of improving the quality, they have to focus upon this aspect and they are the early adopters. But that won't restrict that the government schools cannot adopt this technology. I knew a few government schools in Patiala where the students are getting the lectures through the mobile apps, and especially if you look at the central schools, most of them are working in that direction. So we can follow the traditions of those government schools or the central schools which have adopted technology and which are trying to implement this so that it can be possible or it is feasible, because nothing is impossible, Bhavneet, and to all the speakers as well. Of course, there has to be a mindset. That is why I said a change in the mindset is needed, where we need to think of what way we can provide a solution to this. So this is undoubtedly more implemented by the private sector. But as I said, some of the government schools are also implementing it, and that is another area where we need to focus. There was one question on the startups and the new economic policy. If this could provide some impetus to the startup growth. If I take the scenario that's prevalent in Thapar as well as many of the professional institutes, so they have now a regular entrepreneurial development cell in their universities and colleges. And this cell is trying to advocate more of the students who have bright ideas in their minds, but and they are connected with the banks as well as with the financiers who could provide finances for those ideas. So that way, if we have an entrepreneurial development cell and if we are able to provide certain training or certain skills in those through those EDP cells, then of course this is again a vision which can be seen. More of the startups will be happening in case of India. If we go by the Gujarat state, I'm working on a DSC project in Gujarat. There are a lot of people who are getting the funding through the startup conclaves and other such competitive scenario. So this is now happening in Punjab also. So a change is visible, but maybe a little more time will be needed for this to settle down. There was one question which was saying that can we, what about the policy of bringing of the people from other countries to India? Of course, it's still uncertain. We cannot depict about that scenario. But the government will be taking certain steps where we should be able to provide a better education in India only, so that more people stay in India as well, and we have the bright mindsets in India only. I think that's what I saw in the questions,
Yes,
and those who were similar, I tried to answer those in that way.
Thank you very much, ma'am. Thank you very much, Professor Singh, sir. Now we come to the end of the question hour. It is now our proud privilege and fortune to invite Professor B.P. Chandramohan, Honorable Secretary, Indian Economic Association, to address the audience for his words from the Indian Economic Association. Over to you, Professor.
Good evening. Am I audible? Hello?
Yes, sir, you are audible, sir. You're audible.
Yeah. Good evening, everybody. But purposefully, I wish to have my presentation at the end because I don't want to eat away the time of the precious key speakers lecture. So today I have only two items. One is on behalf of Indian Economic Association, I have to thank all the people, those who are involved in the webinar. And second, I would like to make some remarks. First, I wish to thank our association president, Professor Mahendra Dev, for inaugurating the session. And I also thank Dr. Mamta Sharma, Principal, DNPG College, Golauthi, for giving the initial presentation and welcome speech. And I also thank the Sri Mahesh Chan, Honorable Secretary of the great institution. I also thank I'm grateful to the key speakers. The first, Professor Vijay Veer Singh, Department of Economics, Director, Negi Ayog Chair, University of Rajasthan. And I am also grateful to Professor Ravi Kiran, Head, School of Humanities and Social Science, Thapar Institute of Engineering and Technology, Pancha. I am also thankful to the Chief Convener, Dr. Anil Kumar Thakur, who is a source of strength for all of us. And I also thank the Chief Coordinator, Dr. S. Narayanan, co-coordinators, Dr. N. Suresh Babu and Ms. Kumari Manisha. I am also thankful to Professor Atvir Singh, who is the convener of the session, and he is also an executive member from UP. And again, I am also thankful to Mr. Bhavani Singh Batra, who has done wonderfully this. He narrated he took the session and he done it very beautifully. And I also thank the executive committee members of Indian Economic Association, life members of Indian Economic Association, dear participants, ladies and gentlemen, good evening to everyone. First of all, I would like to inform you that Indian Economic Association is the oldest and the largest academic body catering to the needs of the teachers and students of economics. Every year we used to have the annual conference and some programs with the regional associations. But this time, after the Covid-19, we have been conducting various programs from the last 2 months, and this is the 24th collaborative lecture with Department of Economics, Devanagari PG College, Balochi, and here today we have taken the theme Indian economy after COVID-19 challenges and way forward. We have been listening to two beautiful lectures of two eminent persons of India, eminent economists. And I don't want to spend much time on giving some of the points, but what we have to understood is that a complete lockdown of COVID-19 shattered the Indian economy in an unprecedented way. It increased unemployment in India and a sharp decline in the GDP, and also we are facing a negative growth. To revive the Indian economy, Government of India and the Reserve Bank of India announced various measures. They announced policy changes, they announced some reforms, relief packages, bank loans, infrastructure building, and so on. And when I take the Indian economy, I can divide the Indian economy sectors, because let me take the service sector first, because service sector is contributing 50% of our GDP, 56% of our GDP. And when we look at the service sector, we can find that industries such as fast-moving goods and digital demand, e-commerce, retail, power, smartphones, and petroleum would be performing better. But however, taxi, hospitality, automobile, aviation, real estate would find it difficult to retain the business. Then what we can take from the incident of COVID-19 is that work from home of the IT companies to stay even after COVID-19. And when you take the industry, major challenges faced by the manufacturing sector, but Madam presented it well, due to the one shortage of labor and the closure of many markets, arrangements made for the laborers to stay at factory premises. These were the difficulties faced by the employers. MSME is likely to face more challenges in the operation because they are less bank-centric, resort their business and pay salaries, and managing the operating cost would become a difficulty. Agriculture, it gives a caution to revamp, still remaining an ailing sector. Lack of public and private investment is one of the important reasons. Water scarcity is another problem, marketing and pricing challenges. Efforts are on to barrier-free interstate trade. Agriculture should become an industry, and load pooling transportation of facilities should be given to the agriculture sector. We have to move forward, and the focus should be on sustaining agriculture. And also, as far as the ways forward, I feel that, as Madam suggested, we have to give more importance to digital transformation, artificial intelligence, and robotics, and we can create more employment opportunities in the digital area. And also, we have to increase the productivity of the labor force, as well as we have to increase the employment. With these final comments, let me stop at this point, because this is not evening, it is almost nearing to the good night. So good night, everybody. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir. Ladies and gentlemen, we have now reached the last part of the event. Hope you had an enjoyable evening. Finally, to end the program, I call upon Dr. Pushpendra Kumar Mishra, Assistant Professor, Department of Political Science, to propose the vote of thanks. Over to you, Pushpendra, sir.
धन्यवाद बत्रा सर। यहाँ पर उपस्थित सभी महानुभावों को मेरा नमस्कार। आज के हमारे इस कार्यक्रम में उपस्थित इंडियन इकोनॉमिक एसोसिएशन के माननीय अध्यक्ष और इंदिरा गांधी इंस्टीट्यूट ऑफ डेवलपमेंट रिसर्च के माननीय कुलपति निदेशक आदरणीय प्रोफेसर महेंद्र देव सर, इंडियन इकोनॉमिक एसोसिएशन के माननीय सचिव प्रोफेसर बीपी चंद्रमोहन सर, मुख्य संयोजक डॉक्टर अनिल कुमार ठाकुर सर, मुख्य समन्वयक डॉक्टर एस नारायण सर, हमारे आज के इस कार्यक्रम के मुख्य वक्ता प्रोफेसर विजय वीर सिंह सर और प्रोफेसर रवि किरण मैडम, देवनागरी स्नातकोत्तर महाविद्यालय गुलावटी की माननीय प्राचार्य डॉक्टर ममता शर्मा मैडम, इस अत्यंत सुंदर कार्यक्रम के मुख्य संयोजक प्रोफेसर अतवीर सिंह सर, आज के इस कार्यक्रम के आयोजक सचिव श्री भवनीत सिंह बत्रा सर, समस्त आयोजन समिति तथा अपने अपने मोबाइल, कंप्यूटर और लैपटॉप के माध्यम से हमसे जुड़े हुए देश विदेश के तमाम दर्शकों और श्रोताओं, आज के इस सुंदर और उपयोगी वेबिनार में पधारने के लिए आप सभी लोगों को हार्दिक बधाई और साधुवाद। आज का यह वेबिनार अत्यंत महत्वपूर्ण है, न सिर्फ यह जानने और समझने के लिए कि कोविड-19 महामारी के बाद भारतीय अर्थव्यवस्था का स्वरूप कैसा होगा, बल्कि इसके माध्यम से हम यह समझने में भी सक्षम हुए हैं कि वर्तमान समय में हमारी अर्थव्यवस्था के समक्ष कौन सी प्रमुख चुनौतियां हैं, इन चुनौतियों का हम किस प्रकार से सामना कर सकते हैं और आने वाले भविष्य में यदि हम विश्व व्यवस्था का नेतृत्व करना चाहते हैं तो उसके लिए हमें कौन से कदम उठाने पड़ेंगे, कौन सी रणनीति अपनानी पड़ेगी तथा अपनी वर्तमान नीतियों में किस प्रकार के संशोधन और समायोजन करने पड़ेंगे। आदरणीय साथियों, कोविड-19 ने निश्चित रूप से विश्व की समस्त अर्थव्यवस्थाओं के साथ ही भारत की अर्थव्यवस्था को भी गहराई से प्रभावित किया है और आने वाले अनेक वर्षों तक हम इसके प्रभावों से मुक्त नहीं हो पाएंगे, किंतु चुनौतियों का डटकर सामना करना, उन चुनौतियों से छुटकारा पाना और विजेता बनकर पुनः व्यवस्था में भागीदारी करना, यह भारतीय जनमानस का स्वभाव भी है और यही हमारी प्रकृति भी। जैसा कि आज हमारे विशेषज्ञों और वक्ताओं ने बार बार कहा कि भारतीय अर्थव्यवस्था के पास में वे क्षमताएं और वो योग्यताएं हैं कि वह कोविड-19 से उत्पन्न खतरों का सरलता से सामना कर सकता है और उसके साथ में लड़ सकता है तथा एक विजेता बनकर विश्व व्यवस्था में उभर सकती है। इन्हीं शब्दों के साथ मैं आप सभी लोगों का ज्यादा समय न लेते हुए आदरणीय महानुभावों का हार्दिक वंदन अभिनंदन करते हुए धन्यवाद देना चाहूंगा। आप सब ने अपने कीमती समय में से कुछ समय निकालकर इस वेबिनार को दिया, इसके लिए हम हृदय से आपके आभारी हैं। मैं आज के इस कार्यक्रम के मुख्य आयोजक इंडियन इकोनॉमिक एसोसिएशन से जुड़े सभी पदाधिकारियों, माननीय सदस्यों और साथियों को भी हृदय से धन्यवाद देना चाहूंगा कि आपने सुदूर ग्रामीण क्षेत्र में स्थित हमारे महाविद्यालय को इस सुंदर और उपयोगी कार्यक्रम के आयोजनकर्ता के रूप में चुना और हमें यह अवसर प्रदान किया कि हम अध्यापन कार्य के साथ साथ अपने सामाजिक उत्तरदायित्वों को भी पूरा कर सकें। इस हेतु आप सभी का हृदय से धन्यवाद। मैं चौधरी चरण सिंह विश्वविद्यालय मेरठ के अर्थशास्त्र विभाग के माननीय विभागाध्यक्ष प्रोफेसर अतवीर सिंह सर का भी हृदय से धन्यवाद ज्ञापित करता हूं। आपकी सहायता, सलाह और मार्गदर्शन के बिना हम इस कार्यक्रम का आयोजन करने में सक्षम नहीं हो सकते थे। मैं हमारे महाविद्यालय की प्रबंध समिति के माननीय सचिव श्री महेश चंद्र कंसल जी का भी हृदय से आभारी हूँ। अस्वस्थ होने के बावजूद आपने हमारे लिए संदेश भेजा, आज के कार्यक्रम की सफलता की कामना की, इसके लिए आपका धन्यवाद। मैं हमारी कर्मठ, विदुषी, सहृदय प्राचार्य मैडम का भी हृदय से आभारी हूँ कि आपने हमारी क्षमताओं पर विश्वास रखते हुए हमें इस सुंदर कार्यक्रम के आयोजन का अवसर प्रदान किया। इस हेतु आपका हार्दिक धन्यवाद। मैं आज के इस कार्यक्रम के आयोजन सचिव श्री भवनीत सिंह बत्रा सर का भी हृदय से आभार अभिव्यक्त करता हूं। आप विगत लंबे समय से इस कार्यक्रम के सफल आयोजन को लेकर इसकी तैयारियों में संलग्न थे। इस कार्यक्रम के प्रत्येक बिंदु पर आपने जो श्रम किया है, जो समय दिया है, वह श्रम आज इस सुंदर कार्यक्रम के आयोजन की शोभा बढ़ा रहा है। भविष्य में भी आप इस प्रकार के अनेक कार्यक्रमों का आयोजन करें, ऐसी हम सबकी शुभकामनाएं हैं। मैं इस कार्यक्रम की आयोजन समिति के माननीय सदस्यों श्री अवधेश कुमार सिंह, श्री पीयूष त्रिपाठी, श्री अमित भूषण द्विवेदी और श्री संदीप कुमार सिंह सर का भी हृदय से आभार अभिव्यक्त करता हूं। आप सबके सहयोग, सलाह और साथ में कठिन परिश्रम करने की प्रतिबद्धता के अभाव में हम इस कार्यक्रम का आयोजन करने में सफल नहीं हो सकते थे। कॉलेज परिवार से हमारे साथ में जुड़े हुए श्रीमती विनीता मैडम, डॉक्टर महेंद्र कुमार सर, श्री विनय कुमार सिंह और श्री नरेश कुमार सर का भी हार्दिक आभार अभिनंदन। आपके बहुमूल्य विचार हमारे लिए प्रेरणा का स्रोत है। प्रिय दर्शकों, श्रोताओं और साथियों, आप सभी इस कार्यक्रम में पधारे। आप सब ने धैर्यपूर्वक हमारे माननीय वक्ताओं और अतिथियों को सुना और प्रश्न उत्तर के माध्यम से सत्य की खोज करने की परंपरा को आगे बढ़ाया। अतः समस्त दर्शकों और श्रोताओं को भी हृदय से आभार, अभिनंदन। अब हम औपचारिक रूप से इस कार्यक्रम का समापन करते हैं, इस उम्मीद और आशा के साथ कि कोविड-19 संकट के कारण उत्पन्न चुनौतियों से निपटने के लिए हम सब एक साथ मिलकर कार्य करेंगे और साथ मिलकर इस संकट से बाहर आएंगे। आप सभी लोगों का एक बार पुनः हार्दिक धन्यवाद, अभिनंदन। जय हिंद, जय भारत। हार्दिक धन्यवाद।
Thank you very much.
आप लोग करके बोलो कि मिस करते हैं तीसरे से भी एक बार शायद बात करें।
Thank you all.
Thank you very much, ma'am. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Okay.
Thank you so much.
It was nicely organized. Congrats to the organizing committee.
Thank you so much, ma'am.
Yeah.
We are very happy to have you, ma'am. We would like to be associated
And
with you. in the
Indian
future.
Economic
Thank you.
Association also, we could listen to eminent speakers. Thank you, Professor Advait.
Thank you, madam. You have spared valuable time to us at this very crucial
Short.
day that
It was a short
are busy
time.
celebrating Janmashtami, and you spared valuable time to us. Thank you very much. Thank you, Professor Vijayveer Singh. You accept.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
exit कर लेते हैं।